Tansei, Nitsi Kasun, Kevin Wesaquate, Piapot, Neheopot Ochinia, KEVINWESAQUATE. My name is Kevin Wesaquate. I'm from Piapot First Nation. I grew up in Treaty 4 territory. I moved all over Western Canada as a youth, and I now make my home in Treaty 6 territory in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And I've been building my life as an artist here for the past 15 years. I value the opportunity to inspire and motivate and create that cultural knowledge base within the arts that I teach, and to allow youth and students or participants or artists to express themselves as freely as they want within whatever platform of media I'm using, if it's literature or if it's spoken word poetry or if it is visual art. I love that I'm able to facilitate that and offer it as a teaching. I feel that cultural practices have shaped a lot of the art that I create, in regards to the storytelling that I had first encountered with my university studies. I feel that, a lot of the pride and identity, Indigenous identity within the storytelling alone, helped shape and form the artist I am today, with the idea in the back of my head that the prairie peoples, the Indigenous Nehewak, people of the prairies here, were widely very nomadic and reliant on the bison, Pascual Mustos. And with that, they did a lot of storytelling. So in my belief, I think that, that oral tradition is still there. And through the uses of spoken word poetry, music, drama, even like literature or any type of artistic expression draws out that narrative. And for every single person that's out there, they have their own story. For me, that storytelling is strong, and I feel that, giving that and teaching that to youth is a really strong part of what I do. Using this cultural expression with spoken word and storytelling really helps me to assert my voice and assert what I believe is important, and it helps many others to see that. And when that practice is put in place, we have, for instance, just a couple years here in Saskatoon, me and a bunch of youth planted over 500 Wesaquate berry bushes down by the river in downtown Saskatoon. 10 years prior to that, I wrote a poem that dictated Your Words Are Powerful, and it was a dedication to Saskatchewan's first Cree English bilingual school here in Saskatoon. And the poem had, allowed me to show that gratitude to the youth and to the students, to let them know that they could go on sharing their spoken word poetry in two languages. But and a part of that, I had outlined some things that I would like to see, and one of those things was wild berries in our communities. And through the assertion of my words and the storytelling, it's almost as if I manifested it, and I made it happen before it actually happened. And I'm always invited out to, talk-ins, teach-ins, and discussions about developing community and how we can use that. And artists are often always, not handpicked, but recalled out upon to provide, their insights, whether it's creating panels, whether it's creating infrastructure, whatever it is, artists are always called out upon. And this was one of those first instances where I saw the power of poetry and the power of your words and the power of storytelling manifest into something very beautiful. And that patch of berries is going to be there long when I'm gone, you know. They're about 3 or 4 years old now, so we're going to be picking off of them quite soon. And that's poetry in itself. The revitalization and constant growth needs to keep on going. And I think with, initiatives, or not initiatives, but with groups that, I had founded, like the Indigenous Poets Society. At one instance, we had a language slam, and it was an open invitation to all poets from across Turtle Island to come through on an online forum and share their spoken word poetry and the use of their language within that poetry. And it would be totally accepting if the entire poem was in the language or the poetry reflected the language. So I think in the old tradition of keeping language alive in that storytelling, language is definitely uh, it has to be there. Like when I first got into the use of poetry, my one of my first quests was to find other Indigenous writers because I wanted them to reflect on the ceremonies, the experiences that I had as an Indigenous person, and even the language. When I was using language within my poetry, I wanted my audience to just like feel it. I wanted my audience to, yeah, that's true, or have these eye-opening moments with our poetry that we all experience from time to time. But I wanted that to exist within Indigenous communities, so I ventured out for that. And I think that, in time, for me, it's not 100% there yet, but hopefully one day that it will be there. And I'll walk into a poetry slam and it's all done in Cree. And I'm like, okay, I better brush up on my skills here. So, yeah. The feeling I have when I speak Cree is empowering. It's almost like I'm delving into the blueprints of my ancestors. It's almost like building that connection to the land. I have my traditional name, which I bring into ceremony with me, and I will continue to do so. So when I'm learning the language, I'm building that connection to, not only my ancestors, but the land in which we live, because language, no matter what territory you live on on Turtle Island, whether you're Haida or whether you're a Blackfoot Nation or Dene Nation, you'll listen to the language and you'll listen to them speak it and you'll listen to the references. It is always rooted within the land. And to me, in reclaiming that is just, I don't know, I want to use the word decolonizing. Um, I think that's what it is. Yeah. For me, the cultural practices are daily. I smudge in the morning. Even when I'm doing my art, I'm crafting, with these cultural practices in mind, and I'm making my offerings and my thanks to some of the natural, things that I'm making. Like if I'm out to make a a dream catcher and I'm taking from the land, I'm offering tobacco and I'm giving thanks to Mother Nature. If I'm harvesting paint or red ochre or whatever it is, I'm giving thanks to the land. If I'm just being inspired by walking around, that to me is cultural practice. It's meditation and prayer. And I value that. It's a beautiful process. I'm learning along the way. Like I don't ever consider myself a professional whatsoever. I'm always learning. Yes, there is. This summer, I'm participating in a couple things that my family holds sacred. In the northern community, I'm participating in what we call the sun dance or the rain dance or the thirst dance. I've attended them as a youth, and I've seen my Nimoson and my Nokomis. I see my grandmother and my grandfather, both very strong cultural leaders running these types of things. When I was a youth around this territory, I've attended sweats and learned from that. Back home in Treaty 4 territory, this summer we're partaking in our second annual horse dance, which is being revitalized from the old days when my grandfather, has passed on, we're bringing that tradition back alive. And my family is closely rooted to the idea of horse dancing and ceremony. Yeah. A horse dance ceremony it's all about giving gratitude to what we have and our appreciation for the land. So a horse dance is our way of saying thank you to Mistaten, the horse that has helped our family flourish, and in a way, the horse dance has been passed on from generation to generation in such a way to strengthen our family ties, to bring each other together, to sing our songs. The horse dance is a community-led prayer, and through the symbolization, and not symbolization, but I don't like to use the word use either. It's almost as if it's a partnership with the horse to carry our prayers over the land. Yeah. I would like others to know that I'm Nehewak. And that's how I identify myself. I would like others to know that I'm very proud of my ancestry. I'd like others to know that I'm using my voice for the most best purposes to raise the voice of others, as I always have. If I wanted, I could have been selfish a long time ago and just kind of raised myself and created my own art through poetry, spoken word, filmmaking, visual arts, and just went 100% in on that. But from the teachings that I was given ever since I was a kid was to always advocate for youth and children. My grandfather and my mother have always, had always maintained that we have to continue that teaching, sakehetok, that means to love one another. So I bring those teachings to everything that I do. If I'm going to be lifted, in prayer or in ceremony, or if I'm going to be lifted in my community, I'm going to bring as many youth as I can with me through artistic expression. Once again, like I don't want to sound redundant saying it, through literature, poetry, and visual arts, in any way that I can. I want I want I want youth to feel proud of who they are. I want youth to have a certain, amount of respect for their indigenous identity. I want them to be able to grasp their roots and where they came from. I want them to appreciate those cultural connections in land and ceremony. Um, and I want them to, be celebrated too. And I want their art, whatever form that it comes in, to be appreciated in some way or another. And I think that, if it's just one moment, it's an empowering moment. There's many instances when I first began that I had those empowering moments, and it uplifted me. And I want everyone to feel that. I want them to feel as if their voice matters, their expression matters, their identity matters. So that's the legacy I want to leave behind. There very much is. Um, when I first started my journey as an artist, I, like, without any idea or inclination that I would become an artist, was a story that I had found at the university. I took it upon myself just to go into the Indigenous literature section and find stories. I wasn't going to base my Indigenous education on some classroom. I wanted to take ownership in that. And I didn't want to take it and get like a B or a C average or whatever it was in it. So I went into these areas in search of something that was reflective of who I am as an Indigenous person. I came across a story that was really powerful to me, and I tell it over and over and over again. I've been telling it for the past 20 years, and it's the story of Mistissini, the Big Rock. It's a big rock that it was located some 30 miles south from here, underneath the lake of Lake Diefenbaker by the Gardner Dam. It was home of one of the biggest archaeological finds in Saskatchewan's history. It had the most teepee rings. It had the most ceremonial sites, and it was a ceremonial site in itself. It was the biggest known landmark in Saskatchewan's history, and it was a big rock that looked like a bison. It was a rubbing stone for the herds that once came through this territory. They said that the first surveyors were so curious as to why the people kept coming back, that they dug right into the earth of this rock, and they kept going down, and they kept finding offerings year after year after year after year after year. And in that one spot that they dug, they traced it back to over 800 years that the Indigenous people were coming back and doing the same thing, making the same offerings and living in the same way for 800 years or more, sharing the same story that I found, and I tell it to over and over and over again to as many people as I can, predominantly youth that I come in contact in teaching spoken word poetry, and making that connection that, spoken word poetry can correlate with, Indigenous storytelling, because a lot of the names that we use in our identity are very poetic. Like, think about the names. We had Big Bear, we had Little Bear, we had Wandering Spirit, very beautiful poetic names. So if you think about the language in itself, it's just always a seemingly spoken word poetry, if you will. And it's a oral traditional storytelling. So within this story that I had found, I memorized it. I said it to myself over and over again, and I went back to that library day after day to read it. So I memorized it. And throughout the years, I've seen this story become a play. I've seen this story researched. I've read documents. I've seen the story become an essay from a mutual friend of mine in the poetry community. And I've also read a lot of old artifacts about this place, and learned more and more. So when I'm running into youth, much like I was growing up in Regina, Saskatchewan, I often felt like I didn't belong anywhere, because it was from rental property to the reserve to the city again. And it felt like nobody wanted us around. Like, that's the strong feeling that I had. And I was doing after school programs, lunchtime programs, breakfast programs, and I was like, okay, well, I just wanted somewhere to belong. I wanted a house. Like, why does everybody own all these houses and we're constantly moving, And it wasn't only like that for me, it was like that for all of my counterparts, all of my friends, all the Indigenous people. I hadn't once seen anyone own a house until I was 13 years old. And I was like in shock. I was like, what? You own a house? How is this possible, right? To me, it was a normal thing. So in taking the storytelling, I wanted to give these kids a little bit of hope, and letting them know that, we have a long generation of belonging and being proud of being on this land, and a generation, that's documented for over 800 years. What is Canada? 150 some years old? And these stories and these traditions and these artifacts predate 1,000 years. And to me, that's just, it's cultural knowledge, and it's land-based learning, and it's a beautiful thing. And that's one of the things that I want to share with Indigenous kids. I want them to feel proud of who they are.